Hello, everybody. Dave Neal here, stand-up comic and host of Bachelor Nation News. Blake Horstmann sued by Bachelor producers. The production company that runs The Bachelor has sued him for $150 plus $150,000 plus $25,000 in arbitration fees, and he has to pay $175,000. Now, those that defend contracts will say, well, he signed the contract. He knew what he was getting into. But it begs a bigger question. Is the $175,000 that Blake is on the hook to pay for worth writing his image? And you could argue that it was. We're going to get into the story right now. Follow me on Instagram at DNeals, patreon.com/Dave Neal for behind-the-scenes bonus content. This afternoon, we'll be talking about this even more in depth on Bachelor Rush Hour, the podcast. Unique content for you in the afternoon rush hour. All right, so a Bachelorette squabble is what the title of this article is from puck.news. And I heard this story first. As you guys know, if you're a member of the Patreon, we talked about this story about 3 months ago. I was told he was being sued for what I thought was $500,000. Of course, maybe the number was inflated when they told me, but I knew this lawsuit was happening, and he's being sued for going on podcasts that were not pre-approved by the Bachelor producers. Hollywood's most litigious reality TV producer takes Blake Horstmann for $175. All right, so let's get right into it. Arbitration awarded NZK Production, which produces the franchise, $150,000 for breaches, plus an additional $25,000 for arbitration costs. This past week, the attorney appeared in court in LA to confirm the award. This is at least the second time NZK has gone after a contestant for spilling behind-the-scenes details. A few years ago, they obtained a $100,000 judgment against Bachelorette contestant villain Luke Parker after he made at least 4 press appearances. So yes, sure, as it's appearing, their contracts are good enough to hold up in court, but essentially the contracts give the producers the right to edit the content in any way they want possible. I'm going to play a quick clip for you guys of Blake Horstmann defending himself. The very quick SparkNotes version of the story is that he was accused in being, quite frankly, soft Me Too during the height of the Me Too era. He was being accused of sexually manipulating Kaylin, and he shared text messages that proved she coerced him into sex by going over his place and by not, he said, oh, no, I'm going to bed. She's like, I'm in an Uber coming over. This is what happened. In the plight to share his story, he sort of has to throw Keelan under the bus, and that's the producer's fault.
Let me say this, though. I am sorry. I am sorry that it ended, it all ended and it came to this. I am sorry. When I released, one of the reasons I also deleted the text messages was, like I said, I was having a complete breakdown. I was breathing into a paper bag.
So he's breaking down because the show edits it to look a certain way when, in fact, the show manipulated the conversation. When they showed him angrily running off camera, he was really just going to use the bathroom. So he went on podcasts to defend himself, and of course he got sued in the process. But by defending himself, the greater Bachelor Nation ended up taking his side, understanding he was mischaracterized, and he was able to continue to build his career and become a very successful DJ. So you could argue that he's probably made tons of money in post-Bachelor life. Now, that's not to say that, he got lucky. Let's put it that way. He got lucky that he was able to monetize his influencer life post this scandal, but it was heartbreaking. He was called out by Rachel Lindsay, and I don't mean this really in a dramatic way, but she says, why did you release the text messages? Here's his response.
Actually heard this too, is that you were talking or considering about releasing these text messages from the moment you saw that episode air, because it wasn't what you believed to be the truth. Mm-hmm. And you consulted with people, you talked to people, even the people who were actually involved. Caitlin herself. And Dean said you talked to him as well. Mm-hmm. So what made you ultimately say, you know what, against what everybody else is saying, because it seemed like everybody told you no, you said, yes, I'm going to release them?
So everyone tells him don't do this because they understood how this nuclear bomb that he had, but I gotta tell you, I think Blake made the right move in hindsight, and I think most people agree. He was being exposed as being something he didn't believe he could be. Now, we're not saying he's a Pulitzer Prize winner or Nobel Peace Prize winner, whatever. You want to call him an F-boy, call him whatever you want. He had super consensual sex with somebody, and it was characterized in a way that made him look like he was way worse of a guy than he would have been considered if we actually had all the information. And Bachelor says, oh, we're allowed to share that. And you can hear through his voice at the time how much this affected him.
Yeah. So I think Kaylin used the word she used the word.
She said premeditated.
Yeah, premeditated. So yeah, Kaylin, she used the word premeditated, and premeditated, is just a fancy way of saying, I thought really hard about it because I did. It was such a hard decision for me. That night when I released those text messages, I was breathing into a paper bag. Like, it was incredibly difficult for me. And a decision like that, you do reach out for advice, and especially advice for people who have been in situations like me, and in Bachelor Nation. And a lot of people, they didn't even really say, no, don't do it. They were like, if you do this, know what's the consequences are, that kind of thing. And I did reach out, and some, there were a few that were like, you have, like the thing she's saying, like, you have to do it. Like, I don't see any other choice. And so when people say, why did you was premeditated or whatever, it was such a hard decision for me. I wanted to reach out, and I wanted to talk to other people, and I wanted to see if anybody else had any other ideas. I wanted to see if there was...
And of course, there were no other ideas that he felt worth it because he ended up releasing the text messages. Now, we don't have to blame Kaylin here. I think we can focus our blame on the producers. In the end, they decided to edit and publish an episode that made Blake look horrible and made Kaylin the victim here, and that wasn't the case. And Kaylin should be just as upset as Blake is because he had to air their dirty laundry in order to vindicate himself. He is vindicated. Now, how this relates to the next topic I'm going to discuss, it's a little bit of a stretch, so, get your gym trunks on and get ready to stretch here. But we have a huge issue with mental health in our society. We should be rewarding people like Blake Horstmann who talk about their struggles. We should be rewarding people that don't settle for the edit and puts his life, career, his, all of those things on the line. He had nothing at that point other than his image and who he was. And we're not talking about holding up some image like you're perfect. He just didn't want to be mischaracterized. So we have this huge mental health problem. Bachelor producers say they provide contestants with, a therapist or this or that. But what is wrong with society that people feel so much despair? And it's a bridge. We're going to walk across the bridge from the Blake Horstmann story and talk about, in trigger warning, we're going to talk about the shooting from Monday, the school shooting that happened. I'm going to share with you some Instagram posts that some contestants have made. I've struggled about sharing this because I say I don't want to talk about this. And I don't think you guys necessarily want to listen to this because it's not a fun conversation to have. But we have what I consider to be, and you can debate this all you want. I'm probably not going to read the comments, protect my own mental space here because I kind of feel what I feel, and I've done a lot of thought. I've done a lot of thought and educating myself on this topic. But we have such a issue that is combined. It's a tanglement between gun issues and mental health problems, and they coexist together, and it's created a real problem in our country that the leading cause of death for children right now is gun violence, which again, gun violence is also mental health violence. No sane person wants to take another person's life. I think we can all agree on that. Now, that doesn't mean by calling it a mental health crisis, you also say there isn't a gun crisis. There's also a crisis of the shrinking middle class. There's a crisis where CEOs make so much more money than working class members of society. There's an issue with big pharmaceutical. There's an issue with NRA. There is an issue with lobbyists that donate money to politicians who don't care about us. We don't have to make that political whatsoever in the sense that it's not a left versus right issue. We should all be enraged because we've been divided and we continue to be divided, and it makes our country very, very weak. And we should not be upset with people that are discussing it. And yet it is a big thing for someone like Caitlin Bristow, who has a huge following, to take a stance. Now, she lives in Nashville. Evelyn, Haley, William, Cynthia, Catherine, Mike. 9, 61, 60, 61. 3 children and 3 adults murdered senselessly. She says, people with mental health issues have access to guns and not healthcare. My heart can't take it anymore. Rest in peace, beautiful souls. Yes, we don't have universal healthcare in our country. And we'll hear from people nonstop. And it seems like we almost close off our ability to listen to others when we have this topic because we become political and it becomes us versus them. But we spend more for healthcare per person, per capita, than any other first world country. So much more. We also spend more on our defense budget and all these other things. We spend all this money, and yet we don't get all the benefits from it. We don't have universal health care. You know, I'm fortunate enough to make good money where I can spend $550 a month on health insurance. That's what it costs me. I would much rather have all of our money pooled from taxes to develop a healthcare system that works for people. And we'll have lobbyists and people say, well, up in Canada, you can't even get your knee looked at within 7 months. There are so many examples where we defend the fact that we have to work for companies in order to receive basic health insurance, which, you know, no company should use that as a negotiation tactic. We should all just have health care. And we should live in a world where we have access to mental health professionals, and this is not some breaking news story for me. Greg Grippo posts, while I usually don't get into topics like this on social media, I can't help feel outraged for the families of Nashville. And it's so sad, and I appreciate Greg and everyone else for sharing things. It is so sad that we have to post GoFundMes when you break a leg going skiing because you can't afford the $100,000. It's so sad we have to post GoFundMes for the families of victims when we're not covering them collectively with the full buying power of the richest country in the world. So he posted, and it's good for people to take a stance. All the other countries and what you have to do to get a gun. You can have a gun in Japan. Take a firearms class. Describe in a police interview why you need a gun. Pass a review of your criminal history. Apply for a permit here. These are regulations that exist because, you know, 50 people were killed in a shooting in 2 mosques in New Zealand. It was horrible. And they passed a ban on semi-automatic weapons. And it's too simple to just respond in a comment and say, it's not a gun problem, it's a human problem. Guns don't kill people, humans do. It's a collective issue. And the way we're discussing it is completely flawed. Victoria Fuller had discussed it. There she is. Can't believe this is happening 10 minutes from our house. Truly horrific. Been thinking about this since it happened. And we're happy that that people are sharing the GoFundMes. This is a good thing, but it's a complete Band-Aid on a huge issue. So they keep raising the goal and they keep raising more money, but we're donating to these GoFundMes because we don't know what the fuck to do. We're donating because that's the quick and easy solution. We need to educate ourselves and vote in politicians that aren't taking money from lobbyists, pharmaceutical companies, the NRA. Why should somebody in the NRA get to pay money to influence an election? This issue isn't new. I'm not going to look at Trump should have signed this to protect that, or Biden didn't. I'm not going to look into all of that because it's so tangled. We need to look at solutions. But I am going to go back and look at Ronald Reagan. His shameful legacy, violence, homeless, mental illness. He just didn't understand. I mean, he was literally shot by a schizophrenic person who was undiagnosed. So this issue has existed forever. It's just existing now at a greater volume. There was literally an assassination attempt on him while he's deregulating all of the different types of infrastructure we had to protect people. So now everyone, and I live in LA, I see this. I walk over homeless with needles hanging out of their arms. We see the issue. Nobody wakes up one day and says, I want to become a heroin addict. People get stuck in this opioid crisis. If you haven't seen the show on Hulu about the opioid crisis, there's some fantastic a miniseries out there. It's incredible. I'm trying to think what it's called. I'm gonna have to post a link in the comment section. I'm drawing a blank. But you have to get the full picture of the despair that exists. This isn't there's homeless people in California. There's homeless people in New York. It's the Midwest is just being we have almost like a genocide happening where pharmaceutical companies are just able to spend a few extra bucks to pay off people because they have the insurance to cover products that are leading to death. This idea that opioids aren't addictive, I mean, we look at people, cigarettes aren't addictive. We look at people in hindsight and we go, how dumb were we that we believed any of this? So now here we are fighting over the basic idea of universal health care. And you might say, Dave, how does this prevent a shooter? Well, you might still get one here, one there. Well, somebody stabbed someone in England, so I guess we shouldn't ban guns or anything. The argument needs to be not about banning guns. It needs to be about getting them into the hands of responsible people that don't have mental issues. That's what the conversation needs to be. And the way to further help our country and in the humans that live here is to provide them with the tools to live a fulfilling life. Only people that are mentally ill and that have great despair are committing these psychotic episodes, right? So the middle class is shrinking. It used to be $100,000 was this benchmark for wealth in society. Now it's $300,000. If you're making less than a certain amount, you just live in a world where you don't see light at the end of the tunnel. So because of mental health issues, because of shrinking wages and not keeping up with the majority, like we all know the stats, right? The majority of people can't afford a $400 payment. So you get into debt. You can't afford to go get healthcare done. You're rotting your body in one way or another. Corporations are just serving us slop that doesn't make us feel fulfilled as far as food goes, and we're the victims of a capitalistic culture that doesn't care about us. It cares about the ruling class. It cares about the lobbyists, the politicians. How come our taxes pays for a politician's health insurance, but we don't pay for our own? These are the questions we have to ask, and it doesn't have to be a left versus right issue. And you might say, well, Medicare, people on the left want Medicare for all, where people on the right don't. I understand that. Let's focus on the change we can make stateside, citywide, all of the small changes we can make, and start looking into who's accepting money from big lobbies, from big insurance, from big pharma. See who's taking that money and run in the other direction for them. And let's elevate and find some people that are running for office that are going to give us what we want, which is protection, which is the ability to live a normal life, the pursuit of happiness. All these simple things that we want. And these simple things that 6 people right here no longer have.